I can hardly believe this, but I have been using a dumb phone for 6 months. In this video, I'm going to be sharing some of the challenges of using a dumb phone over the past 6 months, some of the benefits and things that I've learned, and finally I'll be sharing whether I'm going to stick with this phone and what my plans are going forward. In August of 2021, I switched from an iPhone to a Nokia 225 4G. I do have a video explaining why I made the switch and some of my initial reasons for wanting to give up my smartphone and try something different, and I told myself I would stick with this phone for 30 days at least to see how it goes, and it's now been 6 months. I want to start by sharing some of the challenges of living with a dumb phone. The challenges were mainly what I focused on in my original video because there are a lot of things that really concerned me. I really thought that I honestly would be back to my iPhone after 30 days. I didn't know how long I was going to be able to stick with this. So I want to start by quickly going over the challenges because there's just a few, but they're things that I really think I have to address. The number one most important thing, and this is really the only setback for me for using a dumb phone, is that it's not really easy to take photos and share photos with people, and this is something that I love to do, and I was very used to taking pictures with my iPhone and then being able to quickly airdrop between other iPhones and share photos with family and friends. And with this phone you really can't do that. The camera is just terrible quality, and as far as photo messaging, it just doesn't really work very well. So I kind of adapted to it by trying to keep my physical camera with me more often, but I'm still learning to do that, and it's definitely been a learning process. But this is the only thing that has really bothered me about using a dumb phone. A couple other minor things that you might want to be aware of if you're wanting to use a phone like this is that there is no way to use like Lyft or Uber Eats or any like rideshare apps or delivery apps or anything like that. So for me, I didn't really use those things anyway, but it is something to be aware of because I know a lot of people do use those services. And then this is kind of a weird thing, but I think it's just within the past couple of years that this has been happening. But there's a lot of places I've noticed you have to scan a QR code in order to get service. And this phone obviously can't scan a QR code and, you know, open up a link or an app. And so I'm thinking about, number one, restaurants in particular. A lot of restaurants, and I do live in Atlanta, so I live in an urban area, and I've noticed that it's mainly like urban areas that are doing this. Is they're just not, they don't give menus anymore. Like if you go to dine in the restaurant, they don't give you a menu. There's just a QR code on the table, and you're supposed to scan the QR code to read the menus. Usually I'm with someone who has a smartphone and can open up the menu and I can take a look at it, but if I'm by myself, obviously I wouldn't be able to do that. And my experience asking servers for menus is that they are like very annoyed that they have to give you a menu, or in some cases they actually are like didn't have a menu. I also was not able to get customer service at Best Buy because I was told that in order to talk to an associate, like just ask a question, that I first had to scan a QR code. So I left. I didn't buy anything because I didn't have a phone that could scan a QR code. But I've noticed that it's becoming super common, and it frustrates me because I'm choosing not to have a smartphone, but I know there are a lot of people who just don't have a smartphone, you know, not by choice, and those people are kind of excluded from certain spaces. So I really don't like that, and I'll try not to go on any more of a tangent about that, but that's kind of a downside of not having a smartphone. Let's talk about the benefits of not having a smartphone and having a simple phone like this that basically just makes phone calls. Number one, the battery life is incredible. My battery will last up to 4 or 5 days before I have to charge it, and that's really cool. Another thing, there is absolutely no advertisements on this phone. I've noticed such a huge difference in the fact that this phone doesn't like alert you for anything. Like there are no notifications. So it's not just like me not picking up and opening the phone and voluntarily entering into something, but it's also that like the phone doesn't beep or grab for my attention unless someone is calling or texting me. And that is super amazing. This device is just a tool that I can use when I need to use it, but it doesn't ask anything of me if I'm not using it. It just sits there, and I really love that. There are a couple things that I've learned that are just like huge life-changing benefits to using a dumb phone, and these are things that I honestly didn't even expect. Number one is that I am incredibly calm now, and I don't identify as someone who has anxiety. Like I wouldn't have said that I'm an anxious person. But after switching, I realized that there probably was a lot of anxiety around my iPhone that has since gone away. And I think it's just that I'm not constantly in tune with the internet and, you know, things that are going on. And the biggest place that I notice this is when I have some downtime. If I'm waiting in a line or waiting at an appointment or something like that, I previously would grab my iPhone and I would start consuming content right away, and now I can't do that. So it just allows me this like very valuable space for my brain to just take a break and just kind of sit there and think. And this is something that I don't think we get enough of in our culture, and I still feel like I don't get enough of it because I do work online and I'm on the computer all day. So I still feel like I'm very engaged with, you know, what's going on in the world and like constantly consuming content. Like it's still an issue, but it's in those spaces like when I first wake up in the morning and I'm laying in bed, I don't grab, you know, this phone and like there's nothing to scroll through. I don't know if that's kind of a long-winded explanation, but there's just all these little points in the day where now I just have peace and quiet and I'm just kind of alone with my thoughts, where previously I didn't even have the space to be alone with my thoughts because I was always like seeking the next, you know, notification or piece of content. Like it was such an addictive relationship. And I think with this phone, there's really no space for me to be addicted to it. And initially, like in the first month or so of switching, I feel like I kind of like transferred my iPhone addiction to this. Like I was constantly grabbing for it and checking it. And then over time, gradually realized like there's nothing on it. There's nothing to be checked. So it kind of like, it went away. I don't know, all of that adds up to just me feeling a lot more calm and present in my life. And that's amazing. I didn't really even anticipate that happening. And the final benefit that I want to talk about, or thing that I've learned, is in my initial video about the Nokia, I mentioned like being kind of nervous about not having GPS on my phone and not being able to, you know, navigate while driving. And many people commenting on that video suggested getting like some sort of a GPS device for my car, which I do think is a great idea. But what I've found is that my 6 months of driving around without any sort of GPS or navigation has really brought me back to what it was like when I first learned to drive. And when I first learned to drive, I had a flip phone, so I didn't have any GPS in my car, and I learned to drive around the city and the state that I live in really well. And so all those years of having an iPhone, I became really dependent on the maps feature and on the navigation, so much so that sometimes I would be like looking at my phone for directions, looking for a road or something, and I would fail to even like look in front of me at the road sign to visually just see where I needed to go. Like I was so dependent on it that I wasn't even looking at my surroundings. And I realized like I kind of forgot that skill of navigation. And so now over the past 6 months, I have driven 100% everywhere with no navigation. I've gone on road trips. I've driven in different states that I'm not familiar with and have never driven in before. And it's just weird to me that like this is the way I learned to drive when I was 16, 17. I almost completely forgot that skill because I was so dependent on my iPhone. But what's great is that that skill has totally come back to me over the past few months, and I feel like I'm a much more confident and aware driver, which is a fantastic benefit. I honestly surprised myself that I didn't return to my iPhone at any point in the past 6 months. And I've told myself, like, if you want to use your iPhone, just do it. You know, after the initial 30 days that I set for myself, I was like, if you want to grab your iPhone out and turn it back on, like, you could absolutely do that. I have it in a box in my office, so it's here if I want to use it. I didn't set a rule for myself that like I can't ever use it again, and I'm not going to say that I won't ever use a smartphone again. Who knows? But I just haven't wanted to, and I still don't want to. The peace that I feel from using a dumb phone is like such a huge benefit. It's worth some of the minor inconveniences, and having a smartphone just feels a little like unnecessary, especially like I said, because I do spend so much time on my computer for work. It's like it just doesn't, I just don't feel like I need another device. This is an attitude that I learned from the book Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. I think it's a great book, but his approach is to not just assume that we need new technology, but just only adopt the new technology that fits your goals and your lifestyle and helps you do what you want to do. And at this point, I don't feel like a smartphone is one of those things that I really need. But with all that being said, I am quitting this phone. As I mentioned, the texting is kind of annoying. This is not, you know, the best phone out there. For me, choosing this phone was about the price. It's about 50 bucks. And so for me, it was a really affordable way to just do this experiment and see if I wanted to use a dumb phone or not. And so I've decided to make a switch to a flip phone. The phone that I'm using going forward is the flip phone from Sunbeam Wireless. They have a few different models, and the one I chose is called the Daisy. So I have been using this for a couple weeks, and so far I really love it. One of the main reasons that I chose this phone was because the camera is a little bit better than the Nokia camera, and I can actually text pictures to people now. So I can text pictures, receive pictures, and then it's really easy for me to plug this phone into my laptop so I can transfer my photos from here to my laptop, and then I can save them or share them or print them out or whatever. So that's really exciting because, as I mentioned, the photos thing was really bugging me. So that problem is solved. And another thing that's really exciting is that this phone doesn't have all these extra apps that are on the Nokia that you can't delete. So this phone just has a handful of apps, and there's no browser on this phone. There's no app store. You can't download more apps. There's no email. Like, it's basically everything that I wanted. It's just a simple phone. The texting is amazing. The texts come in order, and the biggest thing is actually not about the order of the text messages or whatever. That really wasn't that big of a deal. What really bugs me about the Nokia is that the keys are so small, and I felt like this was really inconvenient to type with. And these buttons on the Sunbeam are like huge by comparison. It's very comfortable to type on. So I feel like this is a great investment. And I definitely will do a video about my experience using this phone after I use it for a bit longer. But so far I'm really enjoying this phone, and it was a great investment at about $200. So it is a bit pricier than a phone like this, which is why I didn't pick up something like the Sunbeam to start out with, because I really wasn't sure what was gonna happen. But yeah, it's been 6 months of using a dumb phone, and I'm very happy with it, and I think I'm gonna continue. I really don't foresee wanting to use a smartphone anytime soon, but you never know. I'll keep you updated. Thank you for watching. Definitely leave me a comment below and let's have a discussion about it. I really enjoy talking about dumb phones, smartphones, digital minimalism. So leave a comment below and let's have a conversation. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in my next video. Bye!